Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State Podcast, brought to you by the Michigan Brewers Guild, celebrating 25 years of camaraderie. The Great Beer State Podcast shares the stories of our member breweries and the rich community of Michigan beer and brewing. Listen in, have a beer, and then check out mibeer.com for a full listing of member breweries, events, and more opportunities to explore and support the Great Beer State. Welcome to the Great Beer State Podcast. I'm Fred, here with my good friend Scott. We are delving into season 3, and we're heading up to the UP to bring you some footage from the UP Fall Beer Festival, where we met with Nick VanCourt and Marina Dupler at Barrel and Beam. So we've got that to share in a little bit. And what else is going on, Scott?
Well, as you know, we've been working on our it's the Michigan Brewers Guild's 25th anniversary. So we're finding ways to celebrate that. We've actually been planning for quite a while, but one thing that we're doing is we're inviting anybody who's paying attention or to our community or feels like they're part of our community to share their voice and say happy anniversary, cheers to 25 years, or whatever inspires them.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to celebrate the people of the Michigan brewing community. And you can do that by going to mibeer.com. And right now, under supporters, there's a link that says share your voice. And you'll see the instructions, a little invitation. Now, that very well may move to a 25th anniversary page in the coming weeks. But either way, the Share Your Voice campaign is where you can get the instructions. You can upload an audio or a video file or even something else that you care to put up there. And we're going to put that into a composite piece that we share with people in the Michigan brewing community.
So, yeah, we're going to have some fun using that as a promotion as we go through spring and into summer. And a lot of this will culminate in July being Michigan Beer Month. You know, we're encouraging some collaboration beers. So I think we'll see a lot of those. And we're going to bring back our really popular pint glass program with the custom design for 2022 this summer.
Yeah, and we're getting into a new style of footage too. So one of the pieces that we're working on for the celebration this summer is a documentary of sorts, Michigan Beer State documentary celebrating 25 years. So we've been shooting interviews here over the last few months. It's one of the things that and the conference sort of added some wrinkles to our podcast schedule. But the end result is we have a lot of new interviews filmed in person. So we'll probably still share some here and now in the moment Zoom interviews, but you're going to start getting new footage recorded over the last few months of 2021 and even the first few months of 2022, all of which will later be compiled into a bigger piece. So the Veerling that you heard a few episodes back was actually one of those interviews, and now we're heading into another one also from the UP, Barrel and Beam. I don't know if
Barrel and Beam has a great story. You know, there's some elements in the background that seem familiar. One of the things that I really like about their brewery is how they've tied everything that they're doing with the beer to this sense of, you know, place or style. There's really, even though the brewery's not super old, it feels like there's a lot of heritage in process there. And while, you know, wild fermentations or spontaneous or barrel fermentations, I guess those probably none of those are the best description. But there's definitely some funkiness going on there. Those aren't my personal favorite style of beers, but I love that they're connected to the ingredients or using ingredients, you know, that are connected to a particular style. I think that's just a great part of Barrel and Beam.
Yeah, it's very much an environmental, you know, mosaic where they're bringing in a lot of different elements to the signature of their beer that reflects that time and place. I also think that I was really impressed being up there, that I like how they've put together a collection of beers that have, some of them have more subtle barrel prominent. So they're satisfying a range of drinkers through their technique. Some of their beers are really bold and pronounced in terms of the more adventurous flavors, and some of them are more tailored and dialed in terms of being a still feeling like a bright, clean sip of beer. So I do think they serve a number of drinkers in their range while they're committed to a method of beer that's that they're not trying to make every style of beer. We'll just put it bluntly. I think they explain that better in the story, but I think it's pretty cool and was really well done.
Yeah, so I encourage everybody to make that one of their stops. I thought it was fun when they talked about, of course they get busy around the UP Fall Beer Festival time. People were traveling up to Marquette for the beer festival. Of course, they're hitting the local breweries, and they said even during COVID when we didn't have the festival, it was still a really busy weekend. No doubt, a bunch of people kept their hotel reservations and
Yeah.
kept their plans intact and made a trip up there.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
I think as old timers too, it's kind of interesting to look back and see. I think that we had a conversation. I can't remember if it was inside the interview window or if it was part of the trailing conversation that usually happens right after you finish the main interview. But as an old timer, I look back and it just feels like a generational or regeneration of a theme similar to when Jolly Pumpkin started. That a model that previously wouldn't be thought of as feasible and still might be questioned by many traditionalists is all of a sudden, blossoming. And it just shows a bit of the growth of the craft beer market, of the Michigan beer consumer, of the overall market palette. And I just remember when Ron ventured out into Jolly Pumpkin, there was a lot of quizzical looks and just like, really, you think you can do that? Nothing, having not seen anything like it before. And I feel like it just makes me smile thinking those steps back then, made opportunities that Barrel and Beam are creating possible, and they all sort of feed on one another.
Yeah, it's certainly adventurous. I'll say that.
And that's what I think is cool about going through all these interviews. What excites me about this next stage in the documentary is hearing these stories from different years really starts to show you to use the word again, show you the mosaic of the brewing community. Like, it makes me think Real Ale Company sets up what next steps, which sets up Jolly Pumpkin, which sets up Barrel and Beam. And, it's just cool to see it all sort of build on one another.
Well, hey, we're returning to what we call a brewer's dozen.
Yeah.
Is where we want to, while we only feature one interview per episode, we do want to work our way through giving mentions to all of our brewery members throughout the state. And we've taken a couple trips through the brewery list, and we're starting a fresh one. This one's simply organized I'm calling it Breweries A to Z. So if we get, which means we'll start with numbers, and then we don't get through the A's with the mention of 13 different breweries, which is our flexible brewer's dozen number.
Yeah, you want to kick us off? Thanks for the nudge. I almost forgot.
Yeah, let's start with 127 Brewing in Jackson.
All right, and a previous guest of the show, Tres Gatos Brewery in Wyoming.
And 51st State Brewing Company. It's appropriate that we're in the UP for this interview, and they're in Kingsford, so western portion of the Upper Peninsula.
And Aberrant Ales in Howell.
Albion Malleable Brewing Company in Albion.
And in Harrisville, we've got Alcona Brewhouse.
Elbert Tap House and Brewery in Byron Center. So that's in the greater Grand Rapids area, Byron Center.
Yep. And Alma Brewing Company in Alma.
Alpha Michigan Brewing Company, another one in the western part of the Upper Peninsula in Alpha.
And we've got American Brewers, Inc. out of Kalamazoo.
Arbor Brewing Company Microbrewery in Ypsilanti, also known as the Corner Brewery.
We've got Arbor Brewing Company in Plymouth.
And we'll wrap up the Brewers Dozen with a relatively new member, Archival Brewing in Belmont, which is in the greater Grand Rapids area.
All right. Well, stay tuned for more stuff and a collection of more interviews and conversations. We'd love to hear from you. So feel free to share your voice towards 25th anniversary, or send us some feedback or even a review if you're enjoying the podcast. And in the meantime, we'll hand it over to Nick and Marina up at Barrel and Bean Brewery in Marquette, Michigan.
Thanks, and cheers to Barrel and Bean.
So thanks for sitting with us.
That.
I'd love to get started and just hear how you guys got in the world of Michigan beer. What did the beginning of that look like?
It looked like growing up in Michigan to start, really.
Yeah.
Just being from the UP. For me, it started, my grandpa, Bert, who's died at 97 years old a few years back, was a big part of my life growing up. And, he was first generation here from Austria, and always had really good beer for the times. In the 80s, he would have the little kegs of, Heineken or Vorsteiner or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So it kind of really started pretty young, because he would always let us kids have a sip, Wasn't like we'd sit around and drink beer with him, but he definitely thought it was something not just for adults. And that's really kind of how it started for me. Then it went to home brewing, of course, which I did for a few years before deciding that I wanted to start a brewery. And Marina here was basically like, that sounds good, but before you start a brewery, you should really get an education and some experience. So that's what I did. I actually did an internship at the Great Dane and Madison.
What year did you start homebrewing?
I started homebrewing, I think it was 2005. And in 2008, I enrolled in the World Brewing Academy, which is Siebel Institute and Doman's Academy in Munich. And while waiting to start that program, because of course that was like 6 months before it started that I was registered for it, I did an internship at the Great Dane. Then I did the World Brewing Academy, which was just so eye-opening, because the book learning part was great in Chicago and all, and I did have fun there. But then we went to Germany and, got, involved in the German beer world, and then did a brewing study tour, they call it, where we went all over Europe. And when we went to Belgium, and I thought I knew Belgian beer, I went to a Belgian beer bar and went, wow, I've heard of 1% of these breweries. And basically just had to have the bartender walk us through a bunch of great beers. And that really got the Belgian, French kind of beer kind of culture going. Went back, brewed a lot, homebrewed for many years, even after brewing professionally. Started brewing a lot more farmhouse ales, Belgian ales. Worked for some breweries in Wisconsin, Milwaukee Brewing Company, Tyranina. And then we actually got back to the UP when I got a job working for Ordoc. So for the first 5 years there, I was a head brewer. And really that's what got us back to Michigan. But we were always looking at Marquette, because we both went to Northern and then moved away to Wisconsin, to Madison. But then, always knew we'd be back. We kind of thought maybe when we retired, but of course, we're nowhere near that. And, we really got up here for a brewery.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So you came up, was the Ordoc position what brought you here, or was you here and then stumbled on
actually, we were still living in Madison when I got hired. And I came back even, I don't know, like 6 months before Marina did, because Marina had a pretty darn good job in Madison. And so we kind of, I got up here, and actually I started there before the place was open too, in that we did our own general contracting. Mm-hmm. So I was involved in that, the build out, before brewing and, everything else really going forward, or whatever else, I should say, not everything else, but. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what?
So this is home for us, really, because we're Upers.
Yep.
But really, I love the whole UP. It's beautiful, but I don't know where I could live and work other than here, because, it's just, there's not a lot of opportunity outside of the area. You know what I mean? It's there, but it's just not like here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Rena, what was that whole period of time like for you in terms of being an encouraging voice and also I mean, what a great deal of change from hey, I like home brewing to,
Yeah, very much so.
to calls from Germany or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. But Nick has always been passionate about hobbies, so that part was not new to me. And we've known each other since the 4th grade. We're from the same hometown and grew up together, really. So when he first started homebrewing in Madison, that was not new. And he said he wanted to open a brewery, and I was resistant. And so I said, why don't you get an internship? And I kind of kept pushing and thinking, like, maybe some of this stuff will get it out of his system. Like, if you do an internship, if you go to school, if you work for someone else, like, maybe this will scratch that itch. But really, you know, over the course of time, it was apparent that nothing was going to scratch that itch besides opening this brewery that he was that makes this kind of beer. This is truly what his passion is for, and that's not wavered.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an adventure, that's for sure, and continues to be.
And what's your beer point of view like? What are the beers that are close to your heart, and how has that changed over the years?
It's definitely changed. I think we don't have the same likes and dislikes, but I can appreciate my own perspective in that, you know, I'm not as technical as Nick. So I can wear the hat of like, well, this tastes good. What is it? What's in it? How can we market and explain it to someone who's not the beer geek? Because Nick wears that hat really well. Yeah. So I think that's been, it always makes for a fun dialogue, you know, and much of my role here is really that public facing, the social media, the marketing side. And so it works well that I'm generally happy with any kind of beer. I'll be real honest. Anything is fine by me.
It sounds like a good Uper tradition.
Yeah, I'm happy
Favorite
with.
beer's your next one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm happy with whatever. And then it works well that we're partners in life because I can be real honest by saying, is this supposed to taste this way? Or, okay, so who would like this? Who wouldn't? You know, like we can really have these honest conversations about the beer. And I think it works well.
I mean, I used to bring home more than the typical brewery beers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not that I wasn't always able to do some of this everywhere, but it being the only thing, you know, is a new thing. Mm-hmm. Or if you say 4 years old is new.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, when you say only this, you mean
only this niche of beer.
Yeah, so
you know,
focusing on a family
exactly.
category,
exactly.
Sort of the farmhouse.
I mean, you know, because really, I think like the beers that even though you do seem to like pretty much anything, Marina's a porter drinker, you know, and we can't make a porter because our beers are so dry. You know, there's no residual sweetness. There's no, you know, that thing that makes a malty beer like, you know, different isn't necessarily so with our beers. So you might still prefer the dark beers that we make, which is very few, honestly, because it's not really a big part of this type of beer. But you do seem to, you know, get into them all a little bit. Sometimes you're a little shocked at how sour something is or how funky it is. But, you know, when you're in a niche, it's like you kind of have to fill the niche. You know, we need some beers to be less funky and less sour, and we need some beers to be more funky and more sour, and we need kind of in between to really not just cover the market a little better with what we do, but also for ourselves learn and grow in what we do.
And so tell me a little bit about the process. So what went both in terms of what I'm hearing is that you had this target that's like part culture, part flavor, part sort of history in terms of beer styles, because you're drawing inspiration from a renowned region. Yeah. But what does that look like when it comes to building a brewery out and thinking, okay, so what am I going to do to try and make beers in that?
You know, the first thing is obvious behind us. It's actually, I shouldn't say it's the first thing, but the obvious thing is the barrel aging. You know, I mean, you can make sour beer in stainless. You can make funky beer in stainless, but it's not the same as what you get out of a barrel because the barrel is a perfect habitat for the microorganisms. It's also a very slow oxygenation process. that wild yeast can use to really make these incredible flavors and do all those biotransformations. So that was one thing. You know, when we started, we had 30 barrels, and we've been up to 100, and we're back down some because we've culled some, though we do use them over and over as much as we can. The other thing that we had to consider and that we had to do, or that we knew was important, is have a mash mixer. So we don't just have a single infusion system. We can basically rest at any temp. We can bring the temp up and down on things in our brew house, which allows for, you know, super attenuation. The other thing that we had to do that's in all our beers and critical to our beer is our house strain is a Diastaticus saison strain. So essentially that means that everything gets so much more fermented than with typical yeast. That we have zero residual sugar. Really, we have beers that finish, you know, at a specific gravity of 0.994 instead of your typical beers that finish at 1.008 or so up to like 1.020. So those, I would say those three things were absolutely critical. The other thing is just the notion of and the reality of terroir. And we knew that we were going to source a lot of our ingredients. We knew that we were going to source our ingredients very specifically and thoughtfully, but we knew that we wanted to represent Michigan with a lot of our products. So the terroir of Michigan is, you know, in half of our list right now. The other half is the terroir of Michigan with the terroir of France and Belgium from the ingredients we've got there. And some of them are the terroir of France or Belgium or both, because they're beers that we decided we wanted to make with just ingredient sourced from there. That's really what we do is, you know, pretty much, actually I shouldn't say pretty much, all of our ingredients really either come from Michigan or Belgium or France.
Yeah. Which I'm hearing as you source either as part of place or part of style.
Yes.
Or marrying them together.
Yes, you got it.
So your beers are either
Old world
representing
and
here
new
or
world.
representing where the idea came from.
Exactly. So like, for instance, the beer I'm drinking right now, Heritage, we intentionally sourced from France, Belgium, and Michigan, and wanted to have that nod to like how we go together with that. You know, we do our Saison Terre is very classically styled. It's very much inspired by Saison DuPont, you know, one of the most amazing beers that's ever been produced. And so we source the ingredients from Belgium, and we really adhere to their methods the best we know, which is not trying to control temperature on the beer, letting the beer be itself. You know, it's like, I really do believe that whole, you know, kind of joke that brewers don't make beer, brewers make wort. Yeast makes beer. Yeah. You know, and I look at all our yeasts and cultures, you know, they're less like ingredients and more like the best coworkers you could have. You know what I mean? And that's really so important to what our beer is the culture and the yeast.
And when you say your house yeast,
yeah, is
that all beers or most beers?
So everything we make, we do also make some ciders, Michigan source ciders, that we use that yeast in. Everything we make that's packaged has that yeast in it, because otherwise we fear that it is such a dominant organism. We fear that it's going to be in the beer anyway. Yeah. Especially with barrel aging. I mean, we can't trust that anything that went in the barrel, we have to assume could very well be in the next thing that goes in the barrel. So we very much stage the barrel use with that, you know, like the first round, we might lager a beer in our cellar. We've been doing that with some beers to get really crisp, clean beers, but that yeast is in there. So then from there, we might bring the barrel out and use it with some Brett or something and not put souring organisms. So like, we can try to control how intense the characteristics of the beer are that way. So everything gets the Diastaticus yeast, everything finishes in the package at that super low gravity. Everything's naturally carbonated here. We don't force carbonate anything. We package the beer flat, though with our house strain in there, it's never really flat till it hits that point. And when it goes into the package, it can be above it, but we know what the end result is, and we work from that. So it's really as critical as the barrel. So it's as critical as anything is that particular yeast strain.
And are you draft only at this point, or are you packaging in other?
We actually,
what does all your beer go into?
we
with that
package
process?
in the 3 big ones: draft, cans, and bottles.
Gotcha.
So draft beer, kind of some of everything gets draft because it's just so important to being out there, being aware, having product flow, hitting sales goals. Draft is so important that everything gets some draft. We might have to prime for draft and then prime for bottle or something like that to get it right, but we do it. And then really all of the fruit sour beers, which is like close to half our menu, or it's at least over a third of our menu. Those beers we bottle. The bottle's great because we can get that champagne carbonation. We can, it's an expensive beer, and it's something that needs more protection. The stuff in the middle price range, we've started doing cans because that's the stuff that's been harder in the market to keep, regular flow. Cans are just the preferred package in general. People will go for that bottle if there's a reason, but otherwise they're going to buy cans. And that's been huge for us this summer. It was critical. It was the week after the 4th of July that we first released cans. And all those cans, are long gone, and many that we canned after. And now we're looking at fall beers because what we thought was going to be a summer's worth of cans wasn't, And so we're really, trying to not compromise our product, but know that we need to make some compromises in terms of how people are going to get it, because, we can't make a consumer do anything. It's really, you do on some level have to appeal to them pretty within their needs,
Yeah. And are you conditioning in the can, or are you carbonating and then
nope, everything is in the package. So we have can conditioned beer. It's a lower carbonation.
So that's a slightly different adventure in terms of.
Yep. It was also, we were lucky that we had years of doing it in the bottle before we did the can, because now we really understand how to control that. Not to say that there aren't little surprises, but the big surprises we got out of our way in a package that could hold 170 PSI, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas a can, of course, and cans are new to us, and cans are a challenge because they, when the truck pulls up, there are dented cans already, then on packaging day, cans are so much, they're just not as strong as bottles, obviously. Bottles, we get a truckload of bottles and there's not a single broken bottle,
Yeah.
So we're kind of adjusting to that. It's one of those things where it's like, it's a cheaper package. Like we have to invest less in the package, but there's way more loss of that package. And we do have to put the right product in that package for it all to work. So that's what I mean by we're kind of learning really what cans are here. Yeah. And of course it was hard to get cans, and pint cans is where we started, but now we're hoping we're going to be able to do some 12-ounce cans as well. And really, it was a problem from the start with our beers being in bottles, in that people, aren't able to travel. You aren't able to take a lot of bottles in your backpack or on your bike. We're right on this awesome bike path. So many people come in here on their bike. Yeah. And we just realized these people aren't able to buy what they want because they're restricted, just those kind of things have really weighed in heavily on what we do,
So for both of you, what was it like making the decision that, okay, so you've thought about having a brewery of your own from the beginning, homebrew days. So what happened that made you say, it's now, we're ready, let's do it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. And you've been asking some good ones.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll just touch back on the canning part briefly. Nick's passion for beer is evident, and that move to cans was not made lightly. I think Nick has always held the space for beer first, and he wrestled with that. And I still remember we were sitting around our dining room table and talking with our distributors, Mike and Megan at M4, and they're terrific and they know their stuff. And their role is to sell beer and be that ear to the market. And I told Nick, I said, that's their role. Let them do their thing. Yep. Your role is to make sure that the product is right and your vision and your intention. I think that's worked well. And that really guides our operations always. But thinking about, the tipping point of of starting the brewery. I mean, I think it was a slow and, I mean, it's always sort of been this fire that's always sort of been on slow. And for Nick, you know, really interested in this kind of beer. And Ordok is great in so many ways, but to really geek out on this kind of beer, you kind of have to strike out on your own. And, you know, I think it was winter time. I can't remember if we have 2 kids. I don't think we were pregnant with Max yet.
No.
But anyway, it was just sort of one of those things, you know, I think personally, I always say my parents got divorced, which is, you know, that happens in life. And as, you know, I was an adult, but it still really shook me to say, what is security? What is, like, how you think life is going to be? And it's not what you thought it was going to be. And so it's sort of like, if he's really interested in this, like, let's do it. Like, instead of why.
We're not that secure anyway.
Yeah. Instead of why.
Turns out.
It's, you know, ask yourself why not. And then it's just sort of like, why not? Let's do it.
I mean, and look at this last year. It's like, man, I really want to even live my life more. Not that I've ever been, you know, afraid to.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, I think for me, I started to go, if it's not now, and I'm this kind of person. Once I start doing something, and Marina can tell you this, you know, it's really hard to get me off it. And also, it was just like, you know, and now, you know, if I think about it really rationally, it's like, okay, I'm only 40, but, you know, we were 37 or whatever when we opened the place. Or I guess I was 37. You weren't yet because you're younger than me. I won't reveal your true age. But, you know, it was just like, this isn't going to happen if we don't do it. And then it turns out, and I'm sure you're very aware of this, Fred, that planning something, like planning a brewery, it's actually like you almost can't plan it without doing it, because you can't get from point A to point B without like critical steps that are not lighthearted or free, you know. And once we started investing time and money into it, you know, it really just, it was happening. You know, I don't know a better way to put it. You know, then we did get pregnant with our second child, Max, who was actually born.
We announced we were going to open the brewery on Thursday, and he was born on Monday. So it was a big life change.
You know, 3 weeks later, we bought the building, which was on the last day of 2017. No, it was on the last day of 2016.
And had you found the building when you announced, and you were just working out the deal?
We had.
We found that's the building. A long story too. I'll let Marina.
Yeah, everything was pretty well set. The one thing, this is a word of caution, I didn't buy the URL. And that's something you should do prior to announcing. And
then you did buy the URL.
Because then I had to negotiate with someone. That's a great business. It's just to buy up URLs.
If that was the only lesson we've learned the hard way, wow, we would have.
That's true. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot. But the building was pretty well set, and we had the name, we had the branding. We were pretty well.
But the building was pretty well set in terms of, you know, we were. You know, we had the purchase agreement, all that stuff. The way the building wasn't well set was that it was actually deemed functionally obsolete by our township. The room we're in right now had a caved in flat roof. There were trees growing. There were snowbanks taller than your head. There used to be a staircase coming into this room on that wall for what they were using the room for. That was separated, falling off the building, a concrete staircase. There were raccoons living in the tasting room.
Chipmunks everywhere.
I mean, and still, you know, it's an endless battle. We are in the woods, like literally out all these windows. We're in the woods. I saw a deer this morning drinking out of the pond. We have foxes that we see all the time over here. I saw this amazing jet black fox a few weeks ago. Perfect white tip tail. And you're just like, you know, we're right by town, but we're not in town. And it's a serene place, you know, and everybody, sorry, I could have let you keep talking, but everybody from around here knows this building because they started in the 30s. You know, it was like all proms, high school dances, wedding receptions, retirement parties, anniversary parties, birthday parties, celebrations of life. I mean, literally, this was the place for that. They had the most amazing food. They had all 16,000 square feet going until they were done with it. So, I mean, that was a big thing for Marina. You know, my thing was like, oh, I want a big space, because I've worked in a lot of breweries, and you know this as well. Space goes fast. You know, when you start to make more beer, like for us here, it used to be this half of this wall of barrels, and now they're kind of all over, and it's kind of sometimes gets hard to do other things in the room already, even though we got this giant room. And we knew, like, it's just, if we want this to be our forever thing, and if we want our kids to be involved, if we really want a family thing to happen, you know, because our kids are 8 and 4 now. I mean, they're not anywhere near the age. It's like we need to do this with a long-term vision, and that is really how we approach it. We make a lot of decisions based on what it means down the road. We talk a lot about how things can be sustainable or you know, that kind of mentality. And that's really all was kind of here for us. You know,
It's a great building.
Yeah. So, you know, as you know, we, as part of the Michigan Brewers Guild, we celebrate community a lot. We talk, we try to learn from and explore and figure out what that means and how to feed it.
Yeah.
And so being part of Marquette's brewing history, and there's a number of breweries here now.
Yeah.
And I think it's just an interesting market for that. And having started at Ordoc, I would just love to hear both your points of view on what it means to you to be part of the brewing community here in Marquette, and maybe how would you describe this? What is the signature of this community?
Oh boy.
Oh, man.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, the last part's almost the easiest part. I think the signature of this community in general is people living where they want to live, to do what they want to do. And I don't even just mean at work. I mean, we have such a recreation focused place in this world here. You know, it's like the mountain biking, the lake. I mean, Lake Superior is, you know, we're in it every week with our kids. People are surfing, people are boating, people are sailing. The beer, that's a thing that a lot of people come here for, is to come to these breweries. I really think Marquette represents, and more, and we see more and more people coming here for it, represents the ability to live your life how you want to live it. If you can handle snow, you know what I mean? That's like the one challenge, but a lot of people are here for that too.
Yeah.
So I know that because it really is kind of how we ended up here too. Because we're just like, you know, again, we're Upers and we want to live in the UP. And I mean, we always looked at Marquette as the place. And I feel like it was never, you know, moving here when we did, the moving to here was never a question even. It was like, oh, it's our opportunity to move there. You know, we had our wedding here when we didn't live here. We brought our whole family to Marquette, you know, from wherever the heck, you know, and just even that example is an example of Marquette was the place we could do what we wanted to do, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're probably pretty biased, but we think it's an awesome town. I think the relationships with other breweries has been great. I mean, we are on
They're
great
all our
terms
best friends. I mean,
with
it's great.
everyone, and you know, very cooperative and always willing to lend a hand with each other. And I think that extends beyond just with the other breweries, but there's an incredible sense of support of just any small business in this town. And I think we've been lucky recipients of that, as have the other breweries, as have a lot of the small businesses in Marquette County and hopefully the UP. But I think this is a community that really supports, and whether that's the breweries here or the people that live and work here and that come to visit, we're really blessed. And I think we've always been really grateful for that support, and amazed as well, because it just keeps showing up in forms of people coming here and lending a hand, sharing things on Facebook, you know, just talking about us to friends. And gosh, it feels like, oh man, you almost don't feel worthy, but really grateful for it.
Oh, that's nice. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about I mean, your time frame in terms of coming back. Marquette in that era is sort of bustling and booming. And when you talk to Terry at the Veerling about the 80s and the early 90s, you know, it very much wasn't, because the whole Main Street USA, I think, and then especially up here, things were inverted, right? Things were heading outside of downtown.
For sure.
So where I'm headed to with the question is, what do you think a brewery or a number of breweries. What do you think they contribute to a community, a downtown environment? Or not? You're not even downtown,
Right.
but I mean, what does having brewing culture do for Marquette?
I mean, it really, the thing about all the breweries we have here, just thinking about Marquette, we are all very different places. It's very much like that destination where what you're going to do when you get there, you'll only ever do there. You only ever have there. It brings a uniqueness of businesses, I mean, even so far as like, let's just say a big brewery opened a tap room here in town. That would be great, and I'm sure it would be busy, but it would never be the same thing as that unique individual brewery that's here. And I think that that's a big thing that it brings. There are other things that bring that, restaurants, it's not just a brewery thing. But I think that's why all the breweries are busy, because we're all different and we all offer a unique experience. And people want to have that unique experience that each of us offer, not just that one of us offer. It's been a very cooperative, collaborative thing, customers and, breweries alike. And I don't know that that's unique to Marquette, but it certainly is here.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be the first to say I'm not a sports person, but I almost wonder if it's akin to like your hometown team. And I think breweries in Marquette give, tourists, an interest to visit. But it's tourist season mainly from June through September, and the rest of the time it's locals. And we see locals probably just as much as we see tourists. So I think I hope and think there's a source of pride there, and that like it's the hometown brewery, it's the hometown team, and we're really blessed in Marquette that we have many that are unique and offer a different experience and just another excuse to get out and about. And I'm not a sports person. I don't have a ton of hobbies, but I do love to eat and drink. So I like to think other people are kind of like me, where it's just a source of fun and enjoyment to get out and about.
Yeah, and I think that's not to be overlooked, because that fun and enjoyment is a quality of life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Example. I mean, where are we if we don't have that?
Right.
Yep.
So that's nothing for sure. I also feel like you guys are making me think of like something I've noticed about some of my favorite cities. And I remember when I was on a trip and I started to recognize a similarity that I saw between Detroit and New Orleans, where I was like, okay, the cities have some grit and have sort of food and music and art and scene. And the thing that started to tie them together for me was bartenders recommending other places with enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Oh, you're here, welcome. Where you got to go check out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And listing 5-6 places that aren't their place.
Yep.
And I feel like I have that here as well.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
like a brewery is not saying we got to keep our locals.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you drink here, and I'm going to try. My business model is to try and keep people from going to the competitors.
Yep.
It feels much more like that. You were bringing it up with the hometown pride of like, people are eager for people to experience the Marquette they love.
Yep.
Or the UP they love, or the Michigan they love.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes to your rising tide thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very strong here. And it's not just between breweries, it's between businesses,
Right. And I guess what I'm going at, and maybe you guys could, it's not much of a question, but it's sort of a comment that I'd love for you guys to add on to, is just that I feel like it's not just a business sense. You're not saying, hey, we'll all do better. You're saying, I love that place.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to go there.
Yep.
What feeds that? And what, or even just what do you love about it? What's important about that to you?
Well, I mean, part of it is because a lot of those things are the reason, even though it was different when we left by far than it is when it was when we came back. A lot of it was we were excited about the things we loved about Marquette, and that got us back here. You know what I mean? That's what, Marquette is what got us to Marquette. I mean, and I feel like I know with all of our staff, everybody that we've hired has a similar thing. They all are here to be here, and they all are really excited about the things they like. And of course, that just naturally is going to come out.
Yeah.
It's the person, to an extent. It's the person that makes that, I think, happen.
I think person is right, because I think regardless of your career or vocation or life, you can always pick out those few people that gave you that hand up And nothing brings us more joy than to be that person for another business or another entrepreneur, a team member, you know, clients that hold events here. I mean, we just want to help and be that change maker that people were for us. And so that gives my life purpose and meaning. Yeah, I think Marquette is really good about that.
Awesome. And when you look at the broader Michigan community, and here we are, festival weekend, and brewers are coming from all over the state, as well as fans and beer drinkers, beer lovers. I don't, again, I'm kind of wandering into a question, which is like, what's it like to experience that? And what do you think the Guild and the festivals do for the fabric of breweries knowing one another across the state? And spreading that sense of unity and hometown pride to a broader circle. Do you think that the festival culture is part of building that? And what does it mean to have it up here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Guild does a great job organizing the event, which you know, whether it's your kid's birthday party or a full-on fest, you know how much work event planning is. So I really give them a lot of credit because I know it's a lot to pull off. It's the only one in the UP that the Guild organizes, so we're super thankful that it's here. And there's a great energy down there, and if you've gone to the fest, you know it. This is like the people coming around something that they love, which is beer, but it's also the catalyst for conversation and community, and beautiful spot, my gosh, right on the shores of, you know, Lake Superior. I mean, really, it's the confluence of so many good things. There's a lot to be thankful for when it comes to the Guild and making it all happen. And for our part, you know, we're happy to show up and pour beer and say hi to friends and, you know, looking forward to the gathering tonight of the Brewers. And it's just, you know, it is like Christmas. We're lucky in that we know it comes once a year, COVID aside. And happy that it's upon us, for sure.
How does it change your tasting room? Like, you got to see a bunch of different faces in here this weekend.
Oh yeah, it's always a super big weekend. I mean, last year, even though there wasn't a festival, people had already booked their stay, and the day that would have been the beer fest is still the single biggest day we've ever had without having like an event here, you know, and or maybe even with an event. Honestly, it was just like endless people, you know. And that's the thing about, you know, the people that come up here to go to the beer festival, they don't just come up here to go to the beer festival. Right. If they're coming to Marquette, they're going to go to the breweries, they're going to go to the lake, they're going to hike Hogsback Mountain or whatever they want to do. They're going to mountain bike, sail. I don't know, but that it's like, it's a really good reason to come up and do a lot of things you want to do. And I feel like that it might just inspire people, brewers going back downstate, to do something different, or just the way they felt about a beer they had, or, you know, that's for me everywhere I go. It's like you try new things and you might not think they're all outstanding, but there's always something new to, you know, work in. Or, you know, you can't make something out of nothing. So this is a different opportunity to influence people, you know? Yeah.
And I think for us as business owners, I mean, you eat, sleep, and breathe your business, and you think, oh my gosh, and then you run into people like, oh, where are you from? You're like, oh my gosh, you don't know who we are, but that's obviously going to happen. But the nice thing is, this is a great platform to change that. It's a great opportunity for them to try your beer and know your name. And that's, from a business perspective, super helpful. Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue to, I just like thinking about people that are joining the industry or have joined the industry recently, whether they're a brewer or whether they're on the sales side or the pub side, or whether somebody like you is thinking about opening a brewery. I want to ask this on kind of two fronts, like, you know, words of advice for the incoming people to the industry. Any overall words about being part of a brewery and growing and becoming part of the industry? And then the second part is sort of like, what's the invitation for community building and suggestions in terms of joining or not? So kind of overall brewery advice, and then a little bit about what you'd suggest to them for community.
Yeah. Well, overall brewery advice and business advice really is be just crystal clear on what your, I mean, to use a marketing phrase, unique selling proposition, but really what are you passionate about? Because it is extremely stressful And when you have a family and you have a lot of bills and you don't know what's coming and you have a team to support and like you're drinking through a fire hose, you have to know what you're not going to compromise on. And for us, it's always the beer. That's always going to come first in terms of, you know, why we do what we do. Really close second is our team. We're pretty passionate about them and always making sure that we're responsive to their needs. I joke with Nick, they don't work for us, we work for them, and we need to make sure that they're happy and satisfied because we love them and we want them to stay for as long as it serves them. So that's, I guess, business perspective wise. I think the guild, I mean, your network is huge. I mean, because there are so many challenges that come fast, it's really nice to be able to shoulder tap other people that have been in the industry. And I think that's why I found your podcast so helpful, is because you can learn from other people's stories. You know, the podcast is great because stories, you remember them. And so I can read the business books and the blogs and all that stuff, but I can hear somebody's story and be like, they've been there and they came out the other side. And that's really hugely encouraging when you are at the most stressful point of your life, maybe ever, or maybe that's still to come, I don't know. So that's things like the podcast, joining the guild, just being very networked is going to be huge because you can really shoulder tap people for advice. And so the guild is a great way to do that through events like tonight.
I mean, I'd say in general for a brewery too, it's like if you're going to work in a brewery or start a brewery, I mean, your focus should be on making a distinguished or distinct product, right? I mean, you know, that's really kind of easy for me to say because that's all we do. And that's not always possible, but it's like, you know, if your beer is just like the beer down the road, then, you know what I mean? People are going to make a choice and you might not always be their choice. Also, you know, really always be changing your beer at the same time because you can't do the same thing every time and get the same result anyway with an agricultural product. So don't be afraid to be improving your beer all the time. And that might mean big changes, it might mean little ones, but like, you know, we rarely do the same exact thing twice because the inputs are different. So like know that and do that. You know what I mean? Like be an analyzer of what you're working with, I would say is a big tip I would give people. What was the second half of that? I lost that.
Well, just the importance of joining in as a community member, whether it be through the guild or your neighbor brewery. Like, what's the call, the invitation to being part of something bigger?
Yeah, I mean, I think Marina covered that with talking about being in the guild, but even just being something bigger in terms of recommending others.
Yeah.
You know, I think it can be really simple to be a great part of your community, you know?
And I've asked partly because I think it can be easy as an entrepreneur, strapped and small and short-staffed to be head. I got work to do. I got my own business to figure out. I can't really worry about outside my doors. That's an understandable position to take. But it also keeps you inside four walls instead of being part of something bigger.
Exactly. And
I think encouraging those people in
that.
those moments to say, open the door, pick up the phone,
go
go to the other bar and have a beer once in a while.
Absolutely.
That sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's really it, I think. I really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for listening, watching, and sharing Michigan's Great Beer State podcast, supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. Interviews featured here have been included in the book, A Rising Tide, Stories of the Michigan Brewers Guild. They'll also be in the Great Beer State documentary coming out in July of 2022. Visit mibeer.com for brewery information, beer festivals, and 25th anniversary celebrations. We appreciate the support and encourage you to like, subscribe, and give us a review. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer. Cheers.